This is the second of two videos on the passive voice in Latin. The first one is, of course, on my channel, and it has to do with the forms and the basic translation. So if you're still kind of learning the passive voice, make sure you've watched that video already before doing this one. This one is going to put those forms and basic translations into some context with some example sentences, and we're going to introduce the ablative agent because that's something that's put in to most or a lot of Latin passive sentences in context in order to show agency, even though the voice would be passive. And so keep that in mind as we go forward, that if you don't know your forms yet, you should probably go back and watch the other video first, because I'm going to assume that you've at least learned those at this point. So let's get started. So first we'll just do a sentence with a passive voice that is not does not have an agent. It is something that we can just kind of run through with cases and the basic knowledge of the passive voice, and we'll be just fine. And so we start off our sentence: In caelum Romulus nubibus capiebatur, postquam illa Romanis dicta iterant. All right, so we have a little preposition here in caelum. Caelum is accusative, so that in is probably in two. Romulus is a nominative subject, it looks like. Nubibus, ibus is a dative or ablative. But given that it means cloud, it's probably ablative. So I'm kind of like thinking probably not the dative here. And then capiebatur, we see our verb, we see a tur ending. And a ba, so that means we have the imperfect passive, but it is a verb. Okay. So I'm thinking was being verb. There we go. Postquam starts a clause, so you do a nice rigid bracket there. Illa, it can be nominative, singular, feminine. It could be neuter, plural, nominative, or accusative. So we gotta kind of see about that one. Romanis is going to be dative or ablative. This one being animate is more likely dative. Given that there's no preposition, so I'm going to kind of put a slash through ablative. If I have to change that, of course we will, but then we get to dicta erat. We see a give, show, tell verb confirming the dative is probably good. Now, this is a cool one. Dicta erat is one verb form. Notice that's the fourth principal part, verb to be, and it is the imperfect of to be, which means we have a pluperfect passive, which is kind of cool. All right, and so we start our translation, of course, with our subject. Oh, we forgot to close the bracket. There we go. All right. We start with our subject, so we go Romulus was taken. Notice that he is not doing the taking, he was being taken. Romulus was taken into the sky. With a cloud. After. And then, we forgot to kind of reassess illa. Illa is, because dicta erant, the A tells you that that's probably going to be your subject, right? And so you're saying, okay, well, they agree, so yeah, I can see that. And then erant being plural is telling you, oh, wow, so that can't be singular. It has to be somehow a in plural. That's the neuter plural. So we're going to go with those things. After those things. Had been said to the Romans, I'm out of space, I'm sorry, had been said to the Romans. Nice dative there. But you'll notice we did that just fine with the passive voice. Romulus was taken, and those things had been said. All we gotta do is add it into some context. You still use ablatives, datives, accusatives, genitives, all the same way you used to. And so you can see a nice ablative of means here with nubibus. That'll be an important distinction in the next slide and example, so keep that in mind. You notice the dative here with the to. So everything else stayed the same other than the voice of the verb. And so this isn't like changing the entire way you do Latin. This is simply like another wrinkle in it. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. Make sure to rewind if you don't understand some reasoning behind something, but hopefully that makes sense. So now, if we understand the passive well enough, we can add in the ablative agent. Agent is a function of the ablative. It is going to expand our knowledge of a or ob, this preposition right here. Now, a or ob usually means from. You've learned that when you learn from. It still does mean from, but when this preposition occurs with a passive verb, so when there's a passive verb, it now means by. And then it also, the word after a or ob is going to be animate usually. And so ablative agents are with a or ob, and they are usually animate. If you have an ablative that does not have a or ob, it's probably an ablative of means. It's probably not the agent. They are translated very similarly, by the way. In English, we can use by for means at times too. So you have to be a little bit careful with the translation. I like to distinguish them with by being the agent and with being the means. That way it reflects my translation the difference in English. However, just keep that in mind. And I guess just for your own mind, a means is like an instrument. Or some kind of instrument, something that you use to get an action done. An agent is the direct the person doing the action. So think of means as instrument, and then agent is a direct actor. Let me say the note was written by me with a pencil. The pencil is the instrument, the means, and by me, the agent, is the one writing the note. So the difference there, of course, is like the object used and the person doing it. But remember, this is going to be, means is usually going to be with, and agent is going to be by. However, I'll tell you, sometimes when I'm translating, I do see by as a nicer sounding translation for an ablative of means, so don't discount that can't happen, but I do like to make that distinction in my head to make sure it's very clear. All right, so we go down below, and we're probably going to have an ablative of means in this one, so we see Romulus, the subject. It's the same sentence as before, just a couple minor changes. Nubibus is an ablative. And then we have a deis immortalibus. And so you notice the a, that's very important here. Coptos s is your perfect passive verb. So Romulus was captured. Romulus was taken. Now, how do you translate these ablatives? Because we have two sets of them. Well, we have to kind of answer which one's the agent. Well, the agent has an a or ob. And so you can say, oh, there's the a, this one must be the agent. This one must be then the means. And you can check that by saying, okay, well, clouds aren't animate. They're misty things. And gods are characters in stories, and therefore they are animate. And so they can be ablatives of agents. So this is going to be your by, and this is going to be your with. So Romulus was taken with clouds, pluralized clouds. Romulus was taken with clouds by the immortal gods. Done. And so it's kind of neat that you're able to throw in the agent like that, but just keep in mind you're gonna think from, I think, for a while. You might say Romulus has been captured with clouds from the immortal gods. That would be interesting. It still makes a little bit of sense. However, because you have that there, and you have a passive verb, it's going to be a by. It's going to be the agent. So, again, be careful. You might have something that sounds good, but it might not be right, so you do have to follow the rules. And I figured we'd do one more practice with one more example, just to hammer the point home. I've also I've made it more of an authentic sentence where not everything is passive just because we're doing passives. So hopefully we'll be able to kind of still do what we need to do. I'm actually going to give you a little bit of a note here on the passive that's very interesting, like pretty early on here. So we're going to get Cleopatram is accusative. Now, before we get too far, let's ask ourselves, can a passive have a direct object? The answer is no. Of course not. The direct object is the patient of the sentence, the one being acted upon. And when that's the subject, there's no room for somebody else to be acted upon. And so when you see that accusative Cleopatram, you know actually that you're going to have some kind of active verb going on to her. After you learn more Latin, you'll learn a lot more uses of the accusative. You'll hopefully be able to do more analysis. But since this is Latin 1, for this sake, we have to say, okay, well, since there's a direct object, we don't have a passive verb in the main sentence, at least right now. So let's keep going. We'll figure out what's going on with that. In Aegypto is a nice little preposition. Quae starts a clause. Let's use red for that clause. Quae is also nominative, and it's probably going with Cleopatra as an antecedent because she's feminine. Egypt is not. And quae is the nominative singular feminine, so we know that she's just the subject there. Ob is a preposition going through Antonio. Corde omni is another ablative chunk. Interesting, one is an ob, one is not in a preposition, so we have to analyze that. And then amabatur is an imperfect subjunctive there. It's our verb, so we'll end our clause. So we see amabatur, there's your passive verb. With the passive verb, we then see Antonio in an ob, and we now have a new analysis of this because we were maybe thinking from Anthony, but now we're thinking by Anthony because the ablative agent is probably present with a passive verb there. And that leaves our other ablative to be an ablative of means. Okay, Octavianos is nominative. We'll put an S for subject. Got a verb and an infinitive going with voluid. So you have Octavian. I'll just abbreviate him as Oct. Wanted to see Cleopatra in Egypt, who, all right, notice the who because we have a nominative quae. All right, who, and then amabatur we have was being loved. We throw our agent in here, we use by Anthony. And then with your ablative of means, corde omni, with all his heart. So there you go. Notice the by and the with used accordingly. Rewind if you need to know why that's the case, but hopefully this puts passive voice into context for you. I think it's more authentic to kind of mix the passive and the active into these examples so that you have to kind of see the difference. But hopefully the note you take out of this slide, if you are taking notes as you watch, is this question up here: can a passive have a direct object? And the answer is no. And of course we'll expand upon that, as we complicate things in Latin too. So thanks for watching. Hopefully this helps with the passive voice, and make sure to email me or come see me if this is after the coronavirus pandemic, and we will continue to practice. Thank you.